They say blood is thicker than water. But on October 15th, 2024, Marcus Hayes' blood, the blood of a man who'd been called just maintenance that very morning, was the only thing standing between a 7-year-old girl and death. The donation center hummed with controlled urgency. IV line punctured Marcus's inner elbow, drawing dark red into the collection bag hanging beside his chair. His face had gone pale, sweat beading along his hairline despite the climate control. Lily, 9 years old with her mother's brown hair falling past her shoulders, sat in the adjacent chair, swinging her legs and watching her father with wide, worried eyes. The doors burst open. Victoria Sterling exploded into the room like a storm given human form. Her Armani suit, usually pristine, hung wrinkled and askew. Ash blonde hair that she always wore in a severe bun now tumbled loose around her shoulders. Mascara tracked down her cheeks in dark rivulets. The Ice Queen CEO had shattered completely, leaving only a terrified mother in her wake. "Where is my daughter?" Her voice cracked on the last word, raw and desperate. "Sophie Sterling, 7 years old, car accident on Madison Avenue. I need to see her now." Nurse Jennifer Harris moved to intercept, hands raised in a calming gesture that had clearly been practiced through years of emergency room chaos. "Ma'am, you need to stay in the waiting area. The surgical team is working with your daughter right now." "That's my daughter in there." Victoria's composure had evaporated entirely. "She's all I have. Please, I need to know if she's okay. Please." The nurse's expression softened, professional distance giving way to human compassion. "Ms. Sterling, Sophie is receiving a blood transfusion from a compatible donor right now. The surgeon will update you as soon as possible. The best thing you can do is let them work." Victoria seemed to deflate, all that rigid authority collapsing inward. Her eyes swept the donation center, as if searching for something, anything to anchor herself to in this nightmare. Then inevitably, her gaze landed on Marcus. Recognition flickered across her face. Confusion first, then the slow, terrible dawning of understanding as she processed the IV line, the collection bag nearly full with dark blood, the nurse checking his vitals with quiet efficiency. The math completed itself in real time across her features. The man she'd humiliated that morning, called incompetent in front of 50 witnesses, was donating blood. Her daughter had O negative, rare, critical. And this man? Horror, gratitude, shame. All of it crashed across Victoria Sterling's face in the span of 3 heartbeats. Lily whispered to her father, voice small but clear in the sudden pocket of silence. "Dad, that's your boss from work, isn't it? The mean one?" Marcus kept his eyes on Victoria, watching her world collapse. "Yes, baby. That's her daughter who's hurt. Yes." Lily processed this with the simple, devastating logic of children who haven't yet learned that kindness should be conditional. "Then I'm glad we came to help." The words struck Victoria like a physical blow. She took one step toward them, stopped, tried again. Her mouth opened, but no sound emerged. Finally, barely above a whisper, I didn't know." Marcus felt the pull of the blood leaving his body, the dizziness creeping in at the edges. "You couldn't have known, Ms. Sterling. It's okay." "It's not okay." Tears streamed freely, now unchecked. "This morning and now you're—" She couldn't finish. Nurse Harris intervened firmly, one hand on Victoria's elbow. "Ms. Sterling, you need to let Mr. Hayes finish his donation. The family consultation room is this way." Victoria let herself be led away, but she kept turning back, looking at Marcus with an expression that would haunt them both, the look of someone whose entire understanding of the world had just been torn down, leaving her scrambling desperately for solid ground in the rubble. 6 hours earlier, Marcus Hayes had been invisible. At 6 a.m. on that cold Monday morning, the executive floor of Meridian Pharmaceuticals stood empty and pristine. Marcus pushed his cleaning cart down the marble hallway, footsteps silent on floors that cost more per square foot than most people made in a week. The third shift janitor had perfected the art of moving through spaces without leaving any trace beyond cleanliness itself. 3 years ago, he'd designed aircraft wings that could withstand 400-mile-per-hour winds at 35,000 feet. Now he calculated the optimal angle for a mop to avoid streaking on Italian marble. 45 degrees, not 90. Engineering applied everywhere, even when nobody was watching. Especially when nobody was watching. The extraction machine hummed as Marcus worked methodically through the carpet section near the executive conference room. Pressure set to exactly 150 psi higher would damage the fibers lower, wouldn't extract properly. pH neutral cleaner at 7.2 mixed precisely according to the chemical ratios he'd calculated in his first week. Coverage rate of 3,200 square feet in 6.5 hours. The efficiency of an engineer trapped in a janitor's uniform. Early arriving executives began trickling in around 7. They flowed past Marcus like water around a stone, conversations never pausing, eyes never lowering. A junior associate knocked a coffee cup off the reception desk. It shattered across the floor Marcus had cleaned an hour earlier. The man kept walking, phone pressed to his ear, stepping over the ceramic shards without breaking stride. Marcus knelt to clean it up. No one said sorry. No one said anything. I'd learned that being overlooked is a survival skill. He thought, sweeping fragments into the dustpan. The less people notice you, the less they can hurt you. 3 years, 4 months, and 12 days of being transparent. Since the morning Rebecca died in room 408 of this same hospital, her hand in his, making him promise to take care of Lily. Since the day Boeing's human resources called to express condolences and inform him that extended compassionate leave wasn't compatible with project deadlines. Since medical bills swallowed their savings, their home, every retirement account, and still left $340,000 of debt hanging over him like a guillotine blade. The extraction machine beeped completion. Marcus began coiling the hose movements, precise and practiced. The executive conference room gleamed. No one would thank him. No one would notice until something went wrong. Frank Wilson's distinctive gait, the slight hitch from his prosthetic left leg, echoed down the hallway. The facility supervisor, 54 and graying but still carrying himself with Marine Corps posture, caught Marcus's eye and jerked his head toward the break room. Inside the small, windowless space that smelled of burnt coffee and industrial cleaning supplies. Frank closed the door and leaned against it. Corporate dropped a memo last night. 20% budget cuts for facilities department. Effective end of month. Marcus felt his stomach drop but kept his expression neutral. Which means 3 people get let go. You've got the least seniority on night crew haze. Frank's weathered face showed genuine regret. I'm sorry, you need to prepare for the worst. The math assembled itself instantly in Marcus's mind. Monthly income $2,640. Rent increasing next month to $2,100. Lily's medication $800, soon to be more. According to Dr. Mitchell's warning last visit. Utilities, food, gas. The numbers had never worked, but he'd made them work through careful juggling and skip meals. Without the paycheck, the whole precarious structure would collapse in weeks. Frank moved closer, lowering his voice despite them being alone. Listen, brother, Marines taught me you never leave a man behind. If it comes down to it, I'll fight for you and write the best damn recommendation letter anyone's ever seen. And I've been putting out feelers. Couple of other buildings might have openings. Marcus found his voice. Appreciate it, Frank. We take care of our own. Frank gripped Marcus's shoulder. In the Corps, we had a saying, stand your ground or lose it. Maybe it's time we stopped retreating. Something in those words resonated, but Marcus was too tired to examine it closely. He just nodded. By 7:30, Marcus was clocking out exhausted from the overnight shift. The morning sun glared off the glass towers of San Francisco's financial district as he drove his Honda Civic 200,000 miles and counting across town to the Mission District apartment complex, where rent was almost affordable if you didn't mind the occasional break-in and constant traffic noise. Mrs. Helen Anderson, 64 and widowed 5 years, opened the door to apartment 2B with a warm smile that reminded Marcus painfully of Rebecca's mother. Lily was inside finishing breakfast oatmeal and toast reading while she ate. Daddy. Lily launched herself at him, book forgotten. He caught her and held tight, breathing in the Johnson's baby shampoo Rebecca had always used. Helen had kept buying the same brand without being asked, one of 1,000 small kindnesses Marcus could never repay. But Lily pulled back after a moment, studying his face with the too perceptive gaze of a child who'd learned young to read adult moods. You look tired, Dad. Did you sleep 9 years old and worrying about her father instead of homework or friends? The guilt hit Marcus fresh every time. Helen's voice carried gentle concern. Marcus, I made extra oatmeal. You want some? Thank you, Mrs. Anderson. You do too much for us already. Nonsense. Lily's a joy. And George always said, her voice caught slightly on her late husband's name, He always said, take care of your neighbors. So I do. Inside their own apartment, Marcus made scrambled eggs and more toast while Lily settled at the kitchen table with her book. Bridge to Terabithia. The story about friendship and loss hit closer to home than a 9-year-old should have to experience. Lily didn't look up from her page when she spoke. Dad, I heard Mrs. Anderson talking to Mrs. Miller yesterday. She said you might lose your job. Is that true? Marcus's hand stilled on the egg carton. He'd hoped to shield her from this, at least for a while. But Lily deserved honesty. She'd had too many adults in her life already who tried to protect her with lies. It's possible, baby. Companies cutting costs. If you lose your job, Lily's voice got smaller. Will we have to move? Will I have to change schools? Her eyes were bright with unshed tears, and Marcus felt something crack inside his chest. He knelt beside her chair, bringing himself to eye level. Lily, listen to me. I don't know what's going to happen, but I promise you, promise I will figure it out. I always do, right? She nodded, but the fear didn't leave her face. But what if this time you can't? The question hung there unanswerable, because Marcus didn't know. The math didn't work. Hadn't worked in years. He'd been running on fumes and determination, and both were running low. But he couldn't tell her that. So he wrapped her in his arms instead. Lily, there is something I need you to remember. Things can be lost. Jobs can be lost. But us, our family, that can never be lost. Okay. Okay, Daddy. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. They ate breakfast in companionable silence, but the weight of uncertainty pressed down on them both. Marcus had just gotten Lily settled for his few hours of sleep when his phone buzzed. Frank's name on the screen made his heart sink. Hayes needs you to stay. Emergency cleanup on executive floor. Someone knocked over the entire coffee cart last night during setup. It's everywhere, double time. Double time. $33 an hour instead of $16.50. The equivalent of Lily's medication for a month in a single shift. Marcus had been awake for 14 hours already, but double time was double time. I'll be there in 20. The scene on the executive floor looked like a disaster zone. 30 feet of pristine white Berber carpet, $400 per square foot. Marcus knew from replacing a damaged section last year was saturated with coffee cream and sugar. An entire industrial coffee maker had tipped cascading gallons of liquid across the hallway. Pastries and cups littered the floor. Brown stains climbed the plaster walls. Marcus assessed the damage with an engineer's eye. Hot water extraction for the carpet would take at least an hour, maybe 90 minutes to penetrate the fibers properly. Wall cleaning another 45 minutes with the right degreaser. Drying time with industrial fans. 3 hours minimum if done correctly. Rush it and the stains would set permanently, requiring full carpet replacement at $48,000 for this section alone. He hauled the extraction machine from storage and began mixing the cleaning solution. pH 7.2 carefully measured. The machine's spray angle set to 45 degrees for optimal penetration. He just started on the worst section, working on his knees with methodical precision when he heard footsteps. Victoria Sterling's heels announced her arrival before she appeared. The CEO of Meridian Pharmaceuticals stood 5'7" in her signature 4-inch Louboutins. Her ash blonde hair was pulled back so tightly it looked painful. The black Armani suit probably cost more than Marcus made in 3 months. Her ice blue eyes swept the hallway with obvious displeasure. You, what are you doing here? Marcus stood still, holding the extraction wand. Cleaning the spill, ma'am. Should be finished in about 3 hours if done properly. Victoria checked her watch. Cartier at least $12,000. 3 hours board meeting starts at 9:30. I need this hallway perfect in 1 hour, not 3. 1. Ma'am, carpet extraction requires time for the cleaning solution to penetrate the fibers. If we rush it, the stain will set permanently. Then you'll need to replace the entire carpet section, approximately $48,000. Technical explanation, engineer to executive. Except one of them wore a janitor's coveralls and the other wore Armani. Victoria cut him off, voice sharp as glass. I don't need a lecture on carpet maintenance. I need results. Can you do this job in 1 hour or not? Marcus felt the familiar weight of the swallowing words that wouldn't help. Ma'am, I wasn't here last night when this spill occurred. My shift. She turned back and her expression made Marcus's word die in his throat. Are you arguing with me? No, ma'am, just clarifying that I wasn't responsible for the initial spill. Employees had started arriving for the day. 50 people, maybe more within earshot, witnesses to whatever happened next. Victoria's voice rose, carrying clearly down the marble hallway. I don't care who spilled it. Maintaining this building is literally your only job. If you can't handle that with making excuses, I'll find someone who can. The words landed like physical blows, but not because of their content. Marcus had heard worse. What cut was the way Victoria looked straight through him while she said it. Not at him, through him, like he wasn't a person at all, just a malfunctioning piece of equipment that needed replacing. Understood, ma'am. He turned back to his work, kneeling on the wet carpet. Victoria's heels clicked away like a judge's gavel delivering sentence. The crowd dispersed slowly. A few co-workers shot him sympathetic glances. Most avoided eye contact entirely. Being witness to someone else's humiliation was uncomfortable. Better to pretend it hadn't happened. Marcus worked in silence, the extraction machine drowning out the whispers. His hands moved with practiced efficiency, but his mind spun through darker calculations. Lease seniority, budget cuts coming, public confrontation with the CEO. The writing wasn't just on the wall, it was carved in stone. I used to present to 300 engineers at Boeing conferences. He thought spraying cleaner into carpet fibers. Research findings, patent applications, complex stress analysis that took months to develop. Now I'm on my knees scrubbing coffee stains, being insulted in front of my coworkers for defending basic technical accuracy. And the worst part, he couldn't even be angry. Anger was a luxury. Anger was for people who could afford consequences, people who had options. Marcus had Lily's medication to buy and rent coming due and $340,000 of medical debt. So he swallowed it. The humiliation, the disrespect, the casual cruelty of people who'd never had to choose between dignity and survival. Because unseen men didn't get to be angry. He finished the job in 55 minutes. The hallway gleamed technically perfect despite the impossible timeline. No one thanked him. Frank found him in the locker room after Marcus clocked out. Heard what happened with Sterling. You okay? Marcus shrugged on his jacket movements mechanical. I'm fine. You don't have to take that kind of treatment. Want me to file a complaint with HR? The suggestion would have been funny if it wasn't so naive. Frank, I've got the least seniority. 3 people getting fired end of month. Filing complaints just makes me first on the list. Frank punched the locker beside Marcus's, the clang echoing in the small room. God damn it, this isn't right. We work our asses off, and they treat us like we're nothing. I know, brother. Marcus closed his locker. I know. They stood in silence for a moment, 2 men who'd each lost things that couldn't be measured in dollars but cost everything anyway. Frank, his leg in Fallujah, watching his squad get torn apart. Marcus, his wife to cancer, his career to medical bills, his dignity to necessity. Before Marcus could leave, Frank's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and his expression tightened. Beth just texted. She's panicking about the layoffs, said something about not being able to make rent if she loses this job. Marcus remembered Beth Carson, 36, always looked exhausted, 2 young kids she was raising alone. Her ex still not paying child support. Has he ever? Frank shook his head. She's terrified, Marcus. Single mom, no degree, limited options. This job is all she's got. The words hung heavy between them. Beth wasn't alone. Half the night crew lived 1 paycheck from disaster. That was the system, keep people desperate enough that they'd accept any treatment rather than risk unemployment. Tell her? Marcus paused, unsure what comfort he could offer. Tell her we're all in this together. If they come for one of us, they come for all of us. Frank's expression flickered with something that might have been hope or might have been skepticism. You really believe that, brother? I have to. At noon, Marcus picked up Lily from Lincoln Elementary for her appointment at Metropolitan General. She climbed into the Civic's passenger seat, backpack still on face bright with whatever had happened in school that day. Dad, guess what? In science, we learned about blood types, and she stopped mid-sentence, studying his face. Something happened at work, didn't it? Too perceptive, too aware, 9 years old and already reading adult moods like a professional. Just a long morning, baby. I'm okay. Lily didn't push, but her silence said she didn't believe him either. The pediatric wing of Metropolitan General carried too many memories. Rebecca had spent her final months in the oncology ward 3 floors up. Sometimes Marcus could still smell the antiseptic and illness, could still hear the quiet beeping of machines measuring life in declining increments. Dr. Sarah Mitchell examined Lily with practiced efficiency. Joint flexibility test, inflammation markers, pain assessment on the numerical scale that always made Marcus's chest tighten because his 9-year-old daughter had to rate her daily pain like a chronic condition instead of a temporary injury. The doctor's expression when she finished said everything before she spoke. Marcus, we need to increase Lily's methotrexate dose from 15 milligrams to 20 milligrams weekly. What does that mean for, he couldn't finish the question. Cost will increase from $800 per month to $1,150. I'm sorry, I know this is a financial burden. Marcus did the math automatically, numbers assembling themselves with brutal clarity. Monthly income, $2,640. Rent increasing next month, $2,100. Medicine, $1,150. Utilities, $180. Food, $400. Gas, $150. Total, $3,980. Deficit, $1,340 per month. The mathematics of impossibility. Lily's small voice broke through his calculations. Dad, if it's too expensive, I don't need the medicine. I'm okay. 9 years old and offering to go without medication so her father wouldn't have to choose between treating her illness and keeping a roof over their heads. Marcus pulled her into his arms, throat too tight for words. When he finally spoke, his voice came out rougher than intended. Lily Hayes, you listen to me. There is nothing in this world more important than your health. I will work extra shifts. I will find a way. You hear me? She was crying now, small shoulders shaking. I'm sorry, Dad. I'm sorry for being expensive. You are not expensive. You are everything. Don't ever apologize for needing help, baby. Ever. They held each other in the examination room while Dr. Mitchell quietly stepped out to give them privacy. Marcus felt the weight of every promise he'd made to Rebecca, every vow to protect their daughter, pressing down like physical force. He was failing. The numbers proved it. No amount of determination could overcome mathematics. But he couldn't tell Lily that, so he just held her tighter. They were heading toward the hospital exit, Marcus already calculating which bills he could delay and which shifts he could pick up when the intercom crackled to life with urgent authority. Code Blue Pediatric ICU, Code Blue. O-negative blood needed immediately. Universal donor report to second floor donation center. Repeat emergency O-negative blood required for pediatric patient. The lobby froze. Nurses sprinted past toward the elevators. The air itself seemed to sharpen with crisis. Lily looked up at her father. Dad, what's happening? Someone's hurt. Badly. They need blood. Oh, negative. And she was remembering their conversation from months ago, one of those random educational moments that happened during dinner or car rides. That's your blood type, isn't it? You said you were a universal donor. Marcus had explained it then in abstract terms, how O-negative blood could be given to anyone regardless of their type, how universal donors were rare and valuable in emergencies. It had been medical trivia, interesting, but distant. Not anymore. The intercom repeated its plea, more desperate this time. Any O-negative donors, please report immediately. Pediatric patient critical, time sensitive. Every practical calculation said to leave. Marcus had been awake for 16 hours. He'd just been humiliated by his boss. He needed to get home, rest, start looking for extra work to cover the medication increase. This wasn't his problem. This wasn't his responsibility. But somewhere in this building, a child was dying, and he could help. Lily's voice was soft but certain. Dad, we should help, shouldn't we? Someone needs it. Rebecca's compassion speaking through their daughter's mouth. Rebecca, who'd volunteered at homeless shelters even while undergoing chemotherapy. Who'd donated to every charity that asked despite their mounting bills. Who'd taught them both that being broke didn't excuse you from being human. Marcus knelt to Lily's eye level. You're right, baby. When someone needs help and we can give, how do we help? That's what Mom taught us. Then let's go help. The second floor donation center had transformed into controlled chaos. Nurse Jennifer Harris, 32 and efficient, rushed Marcus through intake with practiced speed. Name, Marcus Hayes. Quick finger prick. Blood drop on the test strip. 20 seconds that felt like eternity. Oh, negative confirmed, thank God. Real relief flooded the nurse's face. You're literally saving a life right now, Mr. Hayes. What happened? 7-year-old girl. Car accident. Massive internal bleeding. We're running critically low on O negative. You're exactly what we need. They got him into a donation chair immediately. IV insertion, blood pressure check 132/86 elevated from stress and exhaustion. Lily took the chair beside him, swinging her legs and trying to look brave, despite the fear in her eyes. Dr. Daniel Foster appeared still wearing surgical scrubs and cap, face tight with urgency. Mr. Hayes, I need to be direct with you. The patient is critical. We need more blood than a standard donation. I'm asking if you're willing to give a double unit 900 milliliters instead of 450. What does that mean? You'll be dizzy, weak, need significant recovery time, but it could mean the difference between this little girl living or dying. Images flashed through Marcus's mind. Rebecca in the hospital bed, her hand going cold in his. The machines flatlining. The doctor's sympathetic expression when he'd asked if there was anything more they could do. Standing in the funeral home picking out a casket while Lily cried in the corner. He couldn't save Rebecca, but he could save this child. Do it. Dr. Foster's expression flickered with something that might have been gratitude. Thank you, seriously. Thank you. The blood began flowing, dark red, thick life itself moving from Marcus's veins into the collection bag. Lily watched with wide eyes, scared, but trying to be strong. Dad, that's a lot of blood. Are you okay? Marcus managed a reassuring smile. Despite the pull, he could already feel his body registering the loss. I'm fine, sweetheart. Just helping someone who needs it more than I do right now. 15 minutes passed, then 20. The pull deepened. Dizziness crept in at the edges of his vision. Nurses moved with increasing urgency, checking the collection bag, monitoring his vitals, speaking in low, urgent tones into phones. Marcus understood without being told. Somewhere in this hospital, a 7-year-old girl was fighting for her life. His blood was the ammunition keeping her in the fight. Funny thing about blood, he thought, as the bag continued to fill. We spend our whole lives keeping it inside, building walls, protecting ourselves. But sometimes the only way to save someone is to break those walls down, to let something precious flow out even when it costs you. Then Victoria Sterling burst through the doors, and Marcus's world tilted sideways for reasons that had nothing to do with blood loss. After Dr. Foster removed the IV and Victoria had been led away to the consultation room, Marcus sat in recovery with Lily curled against his side. The nurse had given him juice and cookies, which Lily insisted he consume despite his lack of appetite. You have to eat, Dad. You just gave away so much blood. Around them, the hospital continued its relentless rhythm, but something fundamental had shifted. The overlooked man had become visible in the worst possible way, not through recognition of his humanity, but through the stark revelation that his humanity had been there all along, unnoticed and unvalued until it became desperately needed. An hour later, Dr. Foster found them. Sophie's stable. She's going to make it. Relief washed through Marcus with surprising intensity. He'd never met this child, would probably never meet her, but knowing she would live felt important in a way he couldn't articulate. Can you tell her mother? Already did. She's with Sophie now. Foster paused. Ms. Sterling asked if she could thank you personally. Marcus shook his head. That's not necessary. I think it might be. For her anyway. He understood what the doctor meant. Victoria was somewhere in this hospital confronting the consequences of her own cruelty, and part of that confrontation required facing the man she'd wronged. But Marcus was too exhausted to navigate whatever complicated, emotional landscape she was standing in. Please tell Ms. Sterling I'm glad Sophie's okay, and I hope she recovers fully, but I need to get my daughter home. Foster nodded, understanding more than she said. Take care, Mr. Hayes. You're a good man. In the Civic, during evening rush hour traffic, Lily was quiet until they were almost home. Then, Dad, were you scared when giving all that blood? A little, but the little girl needed it more. That was very brave. Wasn't brave, baby. Just the right thing to do. Lily considered this with the seriousness she brought to important questions. Can it be both? Marcus smiled despite his exhaustion. Yeah, sweetheart. Guess it can be both. After another silence, the boss lady, Ms. Sterling, she looked really scared. I saw her. She was. Maybe she's not always mean. Maybe she was just mean that one time. Marcus wanted to believe that. Wanted to believe people were fundamentally good, just made mistakes. But 3 years of being transparent had taught him that meanness often wasn't a mistake. It was a worldview. Still, he said, maybe people are complicated, Lily. That night, after Lily had fallen asleep, Marcus sat at the kitchen table with the bills spread before him. Same impossible math. Same deficit that grew larger every month despite his best efforts. The medication increase would push them over the edge. He'd have to choose which bills to pay and which to let slide into collections. His phone buzzed. Unknown number. The text message lit up the screen. Mr. Hayes, this is Victoria Sterling. I don't know how to thank you. I don't know if I can. Sophie is alive because of you, because of your kindness to someone who showed you none. I will spend the rest of my life trying to deserve that grace. V.S. Marcus stared at the words for a long time. Then he typed a simple response. I'm glad Sophie is okay. That's all that matters. He set the phone down, not knowing what would happen next, whether Victoria would actually change or whether guilt would fade once the crisis passed, whether being visible for one day meant staying visible, or whether tomorrow he'd go back to being just the guy who cleaned the floors. The phone rang. Frank's name on the screen. Marcus heard about the hospital. You okay? I'm fine, long story. Listen, there's news. Emergency corporate meeting this morning. After someone leaked the planned layoffs to the press. Frank's voice carried warning. Hartman's on the warpath looking for who leaked. You didn't say anything to anyone, right? Just you and Lily. Good. Keep it that way. With what happened this morning with Sterling, your vulnerable brother, Hartman's looking for a scapegoat. After Frank hung up, Marcus checked the news on his phone. The headline from the San Francisco Chronicle made his stomach drop. Meridian Pharmaceuticals plans mass layoffs despite record profits. The article cited an anonymous insider about the 20% facilities cuts. A quote jumped out, company making billions while workers barely survive, now cutting jobs to pad margins. It's unconscionable. Marcus hadn't leaked anything, but someone had, and Hartman would assume he was involved, especially after this morning's public confrontation with Victoria. His phone buzzed again, another text from Victoria. Marcus, emergency board meeting tomorrow 9 a.m. about leaked article. Hartman accusing me of poor management allowing leaks. I may need your help. Willing to talk. V.S. The woman who'd humiliated him 12 hours ago was asking for help. Her daughter was alive because of him. And if Victoria was removed, Hartman would have free rein to cut jobs however he wanted, including Marcus's. He typed when and where. Victoria's response came immediately. My office, 7 a.m. before board meeting. Thank you, Marcus. Truly. Marcus set the phone down and looked around the small apartment. Bills stacked on the counter. Lily's medication bottles lined up on the shelf. The photograph of Rebecca on the mantle, forever frozen at 34, smiling in a moment before cancer had stolen everything. I'd learned that being unnoticed was survival, he thought. But visibility, true visibility, not just superficial recognition, required courage I didn't know I had. Tomorrow I'd find out if the risk of being seen was worth the consequences. For Lily, for workers like Frank and Beth, and maybe for Victoria Sterling, who needed a second chance like I'd needed 3 years ago when Rebecca died, and the world expected me to keep functioning. Like nothing had changed. He finished the last of his cold coffee, turned off the kitchen light, and went to bed knowing sleep wouldn't come easy. Tomorrow would demand answers he didn't have, and choices that carried consequences he couldn't predict. But for tonight, he'd done the right thing. Lily had watched him do it. And in a world that kept trying to make him transparent, that small act of visible kindness might be the only legacy that actually mattered. Victoria Sterling hadn't slept in 36 hours. Tuesday morning found her in Sophie's private room at Metropolitan General, watching her daughter's chest rise and fall with the steady rhythm that meant life continued. The monitors beeped softly. Dawn light filtered through the blinds, painting stripes across the white hospital sheets. Sophie's small hand lay in hers, warm and alive. 7 years old, and she'd come within minutes of bleeding out on Madison Avenue, because Victoria had been too busy finalizing quarterly projections to pick her daughter up from art class herself, had hired a car service instead. A driver with 2 prior DU is who'd run a red light doing 45 in a residential zone. The accident report sat folded in Victoria's purse. She'd read it 11 times, memorizing every brutal detail. T-bone collision, passenger side impact. Sophie's seatbelt had saved her from ejection, but the force had ruptured her spleen. Internal bleeding. O-negative blood type rare enough that the hospital's supply had run critically low. And Marcus Hayes had been there. Victoria pulled out her phone, opened LinkedIn for the 5th time that night. Marcus's profile was sparse, last updated in 2017. Boeing aerospace engineer, 2011 to 2017. 3 patents listed in composite stress distribution. Conference presentations. Journal citations. Then a gap. Then nothing until the current listing: facilities staff, Meridian Pharmaceuticals. She searched deeper. Found a Seattle Times article from 2016 about innovative wing design. Marcus Hayes quoted extensively technical language that Victoria barely understood despite her Harvard MBA. The photograph showed a different man, confident, engaged, wearing a button-down and standing beside complex engineering diagrams. Then she found the obituary. Rebecca Ann Hayes, née Mitchell, died April 2021 after 18-month battle with stage 4 lung cancer, survived by husband Marcus and daughter Lily, age 6, in lieu of flowers donations requested to the American Cancer Association. The dates told the story Victoria's corporate reports never could. Wife's diagnosis, October 2019. Marcus's last patent filing, November 2019. Employment gap beginning February 2020. Rebecca's death, April 2021. Marcus's hire at Meridian as night janitor, June 2021. A man had walked away from aerospace engineering to care for his dying wife, had buried her under what must have been crushing medical debt, had taken a job cleaning floors at night so he could raise his daughter during the day, and Victoria had looked straight through him that morning and called him incompetent for defending technical accuracy. The shame burned fresh every time she replayed the scene in her mind. Sophie stirred slightly, eyelids fluttering, but not opening. Victoria stroked her daughter's hair, the ash blonde, so much like her own. When had she last done this? Really sat with Sophie, just being present instead of checking email or planning the next meeting. Her phone showed 63 unread messages. The board was in chaos over the leaked layoff plans. Hartman had sent 4 increasingly aggressive emails demanding to know who'd spoken to the press. Her executive assistant had forwarded 3 urgent requests for statements from reporters. Victoria turned the phone face down on the bedside table. For the first time in 15 years, she didn't care about corporate crisis management. Her daughter was alive because a man she'd treated as disposable had chosen kindness over justified resentment. The night nurse entered quietly. "Miss Sterling, you should get some rest. Sophie's stable. We'll call if anything changes." "I'm staying." The nurse didn't argue, just checked Sophie's vitals and left them alone again. Victoria's mind kept circling back to Marcus's daughter. 9 years old, sitting in that donation chair, watching her father give blood to save a stranger. A stranger whose mother had publicly humiliated him hours earlier. And the child's response hadn't been anger or confusion. Just simple, devastating compassion. Then, "I'm glad we came to help." What kind of man raised a daughter with that kind of grace? And what kind of woman had Victoria become? That such basic human decency felt like a revelation. Her phone buzzed. A text from her father, Professor William Blackwood, responding to her brief message about the accident. "Glad Sophie is recovering. Board meeting tomorrow is critical. Don't let emotion cloud judgment on the leak investigation. Call me." No questions about Sophie's condition. No offer to visit. Just strategic advice about protecting her position. Victoria had spent her entire adult life trying to earn his respect by being exactly the kind of leader he'd insisted women couldn't be: ruthless, efficient, emotionally detached. And it had nearly cost her everything that actually mattered. She deleted the message without responding. By 7 a.m. Wednesday, Sophie had been moved out of ICU to a regular pediatric room. The doctors were optimistic about full recovery. Victoria had finally gone home to shower and change, but sleep remained impossible. She stood in her Pacific Heights mansion, 4,000 square feet, for 2 people who barely spoke to each other, and felt the emptiness like a physical weight. The nanny Patricia had kept Sophie's room immaculate, bed perfectly made, toys organized by category, everything in its designated place. But when had Sophie last actually played here? Most evenings, Victoria worked until 9 or 10. Sophie ate dinner with Patricia, did homework with Patricia, went to bed, while Victoria was still in conference calls with East Coast investors. Victoria pulled out her phone and typed carefully, "Mr. Hayes, I know you probably don't want to hear from me. I understand that. But I wanted you to know Sophie asked about you today, asked about the man who gave her his blood. She wants to thank you. No pressure. I'll tell her you're busy if you'd rather not, but the offer stands if you ever want to meet her. She's home now, recovering well. V.S." She almost deleted it 3 times before finally hitting send. The response came 2 hours later, while Victoria was sitting in her home office staring at budget projections she couldn't focus on. "I'm glad she's home. I'd be happy to meet her if she really wants that. Let me know when works for you." Victoria's hands trembled slightly as she typed back, "Thank you. How about this Saturday afternoon? We could meet somewhere neutral. Maybe the cafe in City Park. 2 p.m. Marcus's response, "My daughter Lily would like to come too, if that's okay. She was with me at the hospital." "Of course, Sophie would probably love that. See you Saturday." Victoria set the phone down and tried to remember the last time she'd made plans for Sophie that didn't involve educational tutors or enrichment activities. Just spending time, being present, the simple things she'd convinced herself were luxuries she couldn't afford while building an empire. The emergency board meeting started at 9 a.m. sharp. Victoria entered the Meridian conference room to find all 12 board members present plus Robert Hartman looking smugly confident at the far end of the table. James Sullivan, the longest-serving board member at 63, called the meeting to order. "We're here to address the unauthorized leak to the press regarding proposed facilities department restructuring. Robert, you requested this meeting. The floor is yours." Hartman stood activating the presentation screen. "Thank you, James. As you're all aware, Monday's Chronicle article disclosed confidential strategic planning that should never have reached media attention. This represents a serious breach of corporate governance and information security." He clicked to the next slide, a screenshot of the article with certain passages highlighted. The language used suggests insider knowledge, specific percentages, departmental targets. This wasn't speculation. Someone with direct access to planning documents spoke to reporters. Victoria kept her expression neutral, but her mind raced. She hadn't leaked anything, hadn't even known about the 20% target until reading the article herself, which meant Hartman had been planning this cut without her input going directly to the board. Furthermore, Hartman continued, "This leak coincided with a public altercation Monday morning between our CEO and a facilities employee, an employee who was subsequently involved in a personal emergency that afternoon requiring our CEO's presence at the hospital. The timing is highly suspect." All eyes turned to Victoria. She met Hartman's gaze directly. "Are you accusing me of leaking confidential information, Robert? I'm noting a pattern of compromised judgment." Hartman's tone carried barely concealed triumph. "Emotional involvement with facilities personnel, convenient timing, damage to our strategic position." James Sullivan cleared his throat. "Victoria, do you want to respond to these allegations?" Victoria stood slowly, channeling 15 years of boardroom experience. "I did not leak anything to the press. I learned about the proposed facilities cuts from the Chronicle article, which raises the question, Robert, when were you planning to inform me that you decided to restructure my company's workforce without executive consultation?" Hartman's confident expression flickered slightly. "Cost reduction initiatives fall under CFO purview. Major workforce restructuring requires CEO approval." Victoria's voice stayed level but carried steel underneath. "You went around me, directly to the board, and now you're using a leak of plans I never approved to question my judgment. The real issue isn't the leak. It's why these decisions were being made behind my back in the first place." Dr. Patricia Hayes, a board member who had made her fortune in biotech, leaned forward. "Robert, is it true you didn't consult Victoria before bringing this to us?" Hartman's jaw tightened. "Given recent distractions in Victoria's leadership, I thought it prudent to develop contingency options. The company faces genuine competitive pressure. from generic drug manufacturers. We need decisive action, not sentiment. Sentiment, Victoria clicked to her own prepared presentation. Let's talk about what you call sentiment. I've been reviewing our facility's metrics. Turnover in that department is 38% annually. Recruitment and training costs run 4.2 million per year. Average tenures is 14 months. We're hemorrhaging institutional knowledge and operational efficiency. She'd spent Tuesday night between hospital visits building this analysis. The numbers told a story she'd ignored for too long. 20% cuts might show immediate savings, but they'll increase turnover, decrease productivity, and create exactly the operational chaos we can't afford during generic drug competition. This isn't strategic planning. It's short-term thinking disguised as fiscal responsibility. Hartman's face had gone red. You're suggesting we base corporate strategy on... I'm suggesting we base it on comprehensive data analysis instead of arbitrary cost targets. Victoria met his glare without flinching. You want lean operations? Show me the analysis proving these cuts improve our 5-year outlook. Because I've run those numbers, Robert. The math doesn't support your position. The revelation landed heavily. Several board members shifted in their seats. James Sullivan studied both executives with an unreadable expression. Robert, James said carefully, do you have the long-term analysis Victoria's requesting? Hartman's silence was answer enough. James cleared his throat. This meeting was called to address the leak. That remains unresolved. But Victoria raises valid concerns about underlying decision-making processes. I move we table the facilities, restructuring, pending full executive review, and comprehensive analysis. All in favor. 7 hands rose. Hartman's carefully constructed power play collapsed. Motion carries, James declared. As for the leak investigation I'm recommending, we engage external counsel to review information security protocols. Victoria, you'll cooperate fully. Absolutely. Good. This meeting is adjourned. Victoria gathered her materials, aware of Hartman's furious stare. She'd won this round, but the battle lines were drawn now. Hartman wouldn't forgive being publicly outmaneuvered. And he still had support on the board. 5 votes had opposed tabling the cuts. Her phone buzzed as she left the conference room. Text from Marcus. Heard there was a board meeting this morning. Everything okay? She typed back, survived? Barely. Still on for Saturday. Looking forward to it. 3 days felt like an eternity. Saturday afternoon brought clear October sky and unseasonably warm sun to City Park. Victoria arrived early, Sophie walking slowly beside her. The 7-year-old still moved carefully, favoring her left side where the surgery incisions were healing. But her color had returned, and the spark was back in her eyes. Mom, what if he doesn't like me? Victoria knelt to her daughter's level, adjusting Sophie's jacket. He saved your life, sweetheart. He already cares about you. But I didn't do anything. I was just hurt. Sophie's voice carried the confusion of a child trying to understand adult complexities. Why would he help if he didn't know me? How to explain that kindness didn't require transaction, that some people helped simply because help was needed. Victoria had spent 15 years operating in a world where every action had calculated. Every relationship served strategic purpose, and her 7-year-old daughter was asking questions Victoria couldn't answer. Because he's a good person, Sophie. Sometimes that's enough. They settled at an outdoor table. Victoria ordered coffee she didn't drink, hands too unsteady to trust holding the cup. Every few seconds she glanced toward the park entrance, anxiety building. What if Marcus changed his mind? What if he'd only agreed out of obligation? What if that's them? Sophie had spotted Marcus and Lily first walking across the grass toward the cafe. Marcus wore jeans and a button-down shirt, looking more like the engineer in that old Seattle Times photo than the janitor in coveralls. Lily matched her father's casual attire, a book tucked under her arm. Sophie's face transformed with recognition and something like wonder. Mom, is that him, the man who helped me? Yes, baby. Marcus and Lily reached the table. For a moment, everyone just stood there in awkward silence, multiple layers of debt and obligation and shame, making normal pleasantries impossible. Then Sophie, with the directness of children who haven't learned adult filters, broke through. Mr. Hayes, thank you for saving me. The doctor said your blood saved my life. Marcus crouched to her eye level, and Victoria saw something shift in his expression, the guarded wariness softening into genuine warmth. I'm really glad I could help. How are you feeling? Tired a lot, and my stomach hurts where they did the surgery, but I'm okay. Sophie looked at Lily with shy interest. You were there too, right at the hospital? Lily nodded. My dad was taking me to my doctor appointment when we heard them asking for help, so we went. That was really nice of you. Sophie's voice carried absolute sincerity. Most people don't help. The observation landed heavily. Victoria wondered what kind of life had already taught her daughter that kindness was the exception rather than the rule, and realized with a twist of guilt that she'd been teaching exactly that lesson through her own example. Marcus suggested the girls sit together on a nearby bench where they could talk while the adults had coffee. Lily pulled out her book, Charlotte's Web, and showed it to Sophie. I brought this for you. It's one of my favorites. It's about a pig and a spider who become friends, even though they're really different. And Sophie took the book carefully like it was precious. I love reading. Thank you so much. The girls moved to the bench, heads already bent together over the pages, and Victoria was left facing Marcus across the small cafe table. All the apologies she'd practiced dissolved into inadequacy. I don't know how to do this. The words came out more honest than she'd intended. I've been practicing what to say for days, and everything sounds hollow. Marcus's expression was unreadable. You don't have to say anything. I do, though. I absolutely do. Victoria forced herself to meet his eyes. What I said to you Monday morning, the way I treated you, there's no excuse for it. I was cruel and dismissive. And then 6 hours later, you saved my daughter's life without hesitation. Any decent person would have done the same. No, Bam. Her voice came out sharper than intended. Most people would have walked away. You had every justification to walk away. But you didn't. You stayed. You donated double the normal amount. And you know what haunts me most? Marcus waited. I didn't even remember you. When I saw you in that donation center, it took me a full minute to place where I knew you from. I'd been so casually cruel, and I didn't even remember doing it because you weren't important enough to remember. That's who I'd become. The confession hung between them, ugly and true. Marcus's response came quietly. People can change. Can they? Victoria's laugh came out bitter. I want to believe that, but I don't know how to be someone different when the entire system rewards being exactly who I was. Then maybe help change the system too. Victoria almost laughed. You make it sound simple. It's not simple, but it's not impossible either. You have power, real power. You could use it differently. By doing what's suddenly becoming warm and fuzzy, my board would replace me in a week. I'm not talking about being warm and fuzzy. Something in Marcus's tone sharpened. I'm talking about remembering that the people who work for you are people, that efficiency metrics don't capture human dignity, that the janitor cleaning your floors has a daughter and medical bills and dreams that matter just as much as yours do. The words hit harder than Victoria's carefully controlled boardroom negotiations ever had. Direct, unvarnished, true. You're right. She met his gaze fully. And I don't know how to fix it, but I have to try. For Sophie. She's 7 years old and she already knows most people don't help. That's what I'm teaching her. They sat in silence for a moment watching their daughters. Sophie was laughing at something Lily had said, the sound bright and clear and completely normal. A week ago, she'd been dying. Now she was laughing. Victoria took a breath and made the offer she'd been building toward. I want to hire you as a consultant to help me restructure company policies. Not just facilities, everything. Healthcare, parental leave, scheduling, wages. Make them actually support people instead of extracting maximum productivity. Let me pay you properly for that expertise. I'm a janitor. You're a former aerospace engineer who's been managing impossible financial calculations for 3 years while raising a daughter alone. Don't minimize what you are. Victoria's hands were shaking slightly, but her voice stayed steady. I looked you up. Read your patents. Your work on composite materials is still cited in current research. You walked away from all of that to take care of your wife and daughter. It shouldn't matter who I was. It should only matter that I'm a person who deserves basic respect. You're right, again. Victoria managed a tired smile, but my point stands. You have expertise, both technical and human. I need real expertise to restructure policies that actually work. Help me do it right. Let me pay you what that's worth. Marcus studied her for a long moment. I'll think about it. That's all I'm asking. The girls returned, then Sophie moving carefully but with more energy than she'd shown all week. She was clutching Charlotte's web like treasure and smiling. Mom, can Lily come over sometime? She said she'd show me the exercises she does for her arthritis. Victoria glanced at Marcus, asking permission without words. He nodded slightly. I think that could be arranged, if it's okay with Lily's dad. It's okay with me, if Lily wants to. I want to. Lily's enthusiasm was genuine. Sophie's really nice. They exchanged phone numbers, made vague plans to coordinate schedules, said goodbyes that felt both normal and surreal. Two families brought together by crisis, held together by choices made in its aftermath. As Victoria drove home with Sophie chattering about her new friend, she felt something shift inside. Not redemption, she hadn't earned that, but possibility, the chance to be someone different than she'd been. Her phone buzzed at a red light. Text from Marcus. Thank you for today. Sophie is a great kid. You're raising her well. Victoria's throat tightened. She typed back, so are you with Lily. She's remarkable. Another buzz. I've been thinking about your offer. I'll help you with the policy restructuring. But I have conditions. Name them. 1. Any policies we develop apply to everyone, not just our specific situations. 2. I maintain my night shift while we work on this. I need the stability, and I need to stay connected to the people these changes will affect. 3. You actually implement what we develop even if your board pushes back. No performative gestures. Victoria read the conditions twice. They were non-negotiable, and they were exactly right. Agreed. All 3. When can you start? Monday after my shift ends at 2 p.m. Thank you, Marcus, for everything. We haven't accomplished anything yet. Check back in 6 months and we'll see if thanks are warranted. Monday afternoon found Victoria in conference room B with Marcus and Patricia Hayes, her VP of Human Resources. Patricia had been with Meridian 12 years and had seen 3 different CEO regimes. She didn't impress easily. Ms. Sterling, I'll be honest. Patricia's tone was professional but skeptical. I'm dubious that one consultant can change 15 years of corporate culture, but I'm willing to be proven wrong. Marcus met her skepticism without flinching. I appreciate the honesty, and I'm dubious too, but we won't know unless we try. Victoria pulled up her presentation on the wall screen. Current policies on parental leave, healthcare coverage, scheduling, flexibility, and wage structures. The slides told a story she should have seen years ago. Parental leave, 6 weeks, unpaid, industry standard, but devastating for hourly workers. Healthcare, $6,000 deductible for anyone making under $50,000 annually. Scheduling, shift changes with 48 hours notice. Wages, $16.50 per hour, while Silicon Valley competitors paid $22. Patricia nodded grimly. Industry standard means changing them puts us at competitive disadvantage. Marcus leaned forward. Or competitive advantage. Turnover costs $4.2 million annually. Average tenures is 14 months. Sick days 23% higher than industry average. Those are hard costs directly tied to policy failures. Patricia's expression shifted. Where did you get these metrics, public HR, reports and calculation? Marcus's tone stayed matter of fact. I've been living in this data for 3 years. They worked through the afternoon, Marcus drawing on his engineering background to map systems and dependencies. Healthcare improvements would reduce sick day abuse. Better scheduling would improve productivity. Wage increases would cut turnover. Patricia remained skeptical but engaged, pointing out legal requirements and budget constraints while grudgingly admitting some ideas had merit. By 5 p.m., they'd outlined something that might actually work. A comprehensive policy overhaul that would cost money up front but potentially save it long term. This is good work, Patricia admitted. And really good. But Hartman will fight every line item. Then we make the case for long-term ROI, Victoria said firmly. After Patricia left, Marcus turned to Victoria. You're putting your position at risk for this. My position is already at risk. At least this way I'm risking it for something that matters. The resistance came faster than expected. Thursday morning, Frank caught Marcus as he was clocking out. Corporate sent down new efficiency protocols. Frank's expression was grim. Cutting night crew by 15%. Orders from Hartman bypassed Victoria completely. End of month implementation. Marcus felt cold dread settle. When was this decided? Meeting yesterday. I just got the notice. Frank's jaw was tight. I have to let 3 people go, and you're second from bottom in seniority. Does Victoria know? If she does, she didn't stop it. Marcus drove home on autopilot. The policy work with Victoria, the careful planning, none of it mattered if Hartman could go around her. His phone buzzed. Text from Victoria. Just found out about Hartman's cuts. Emergency meeting with James Sullivan tomorrow. I'm fighting this, I promise. Marcus stared at the message. Promises were easy. Follow-through was harder. But he typed back, okay, keep me posted. Friday brought another complication. Marcus was doing his rounds when he passed the main boardroom. The door stood slightly ajar. Through the gap, he could see a folder on the conference table stamped, confidential, board meeting agenda. Every instinct said, keep walking, stay transparent. But he thought about Frank having to fire 3 people. Thought about Beth Carson with her 2 kids. Thought about all the careful policy planning that meant nothing if Hartman could sabotage it. Marcus glanced down the empty hallway. Then he slipped into the boardroom. The folder contained exactly what he'd feared. Board meeting agenda for Monday. Item 4, employee cost reduction implementation. Item 7, review of CEO authority over personnel decisions. Margin notes in Hartman's handwriting. Sterling's policy proposals represent fiscal irresponsibility driven by personal guilt. Recommend limiting her authority over HR and operations decisions. They were going to sideline Victoria before she could implement any real changes. Marcus couldn't photograph the documents that would be theft, but he could read them, memorize them. And there was one thing he could do. He pulled out his phone and opened the employee hotline app. Meridian had set it up for anonymous compliance reporting. He typed, board meeting Monday includes plans to limit CEO authority and implement workforce reductions without proper review. Concerns about labor law compliance and retaliation. He hit submit. The report went through compliance, not press, legal theoretically, but Hartman would know someone had accessed the agenda. His phone rang 20 minutes later. Victoria's name. Marcus, can you come to my office now? Her tone carried urgency that made his stomach clench. Victoria's office door was closed when he arrived. Through the glass walls, he could see her pacing. She gestured him in. I just got off the phone with James Sullivan and 2 board members. Victoria's voice was raw. Hartman's calling an emergency vote Monday to limit my operational control. I saw the agenda, Marcus admitted. That's why I'm here. Victoria's eyes sharpened. You saw it, how? Folder was left in the boardroom. I read it. Didn't photograph anything. Just read what was there. And then, Marcus explained about the compliance hotline. Victoria listened without interrupting. When he finished, she sat heavily. That report triggered automatic board notification. Hartman knows someone read the agenda. He'll assume you're involved. I know. Marcus, he's going to come after you. File charges if he can. At minimum, push to have you terminated immediately. I know that too. Victoria stood abruptly, moving to the window. Her reflection looked haunted. I told you I'd protect you. I promised we'd see this through, and I'm about to fail at both. You can't protect me from Hartman. Not if the board backs him. Then what do we do? Just accept that the system wins. Marcus thought about Lily asking if they should help. Thought about Rebecca making him promise to take care of their daughter, which meant teaching her what mattered. We make noise, he heard himself say. Make it public. Make it impossible to quietly bury this. Victoria turned. What are you suggesting? You have media contacts. Call them. Tell them everything, the policy proposals, Hartman's opposition, the cuts happening while the company posts record profits. Force the board to have this conversation publicly. That's career suicide for both of us. Hartman's going to fire me anyway. The only question is whether I go quietly or whether we use whatever platform we have left to say something that matters. Victoria studied him. You'd risk everything for a fight we'll probably lose. 3 weeks ago, I gave blood to save your daughter, despite how you treated me. Lily asked one question. Can we help? I realized all my careful survival strategies didn't matter compared to teaching my daughter what it means to do the right thing even when it costs you. The words hung heavy. Victoria's phone buzzed. She glanced at it and her expression shifted. Hartman just sent formal notice. Emergency board meeting Monday at 9 to review my operational authority. Then we move faster too. Can you set up press contacts for tomorrow? Marcus, you need to understand what you're risking. Employment record, future career prospects. I'm already at the bottom. I clean floors at night and can barely afford my daughter's medication. The only thing I have left to lose is my self-respect, and I'm tired of trading that for survival. Victoria's expression cracked. What if we do this and nothing changes? Then at least Lily will know I tried, and Sophie will see her mother chose to fight for something right. She nodded slowly. Okay, let's do it. They worked through Friday night and Saturday morning. Victoria contacted Amanda Vega at the Chronicle plus 2 other reporters. Marcus prepared a statement about working conditions, honest, specific, backed by numbers. By Saturday afternoon, they'd committed to going public Monday morning before the board meeting. Marcus drove home exhausted. Sunday stretched long and anxious. He spent it with Lily trying to be present. Sunday evening, his phone rang. Beth Carson's name made his stomach drop. Marcus, I need to tell you something. Her voice shook. Hartman called me Friday. He knows you filed that compliance report. And he offered me a deal. Marcus's hands went numb. What kind of deal? If I testify that you encouraged me to leak information, that you pressured night crew to talk to reporters, he'll protect my position. If I don't cooperate, I'll be first on the layoff list. Beth was crying now. I have 2 kids, Marcus. I'm already behind on rent. I can't lose this job. I'm so sorry. The betrayal hit hard, not because Beth was wrong, he'd have done the same for Lily, but because Hartman had found at exactly the right pressure point. When's the testimony? Monday morning, 9 a.m. board meeting. Her voice broke. I told him yes, I have to feed my kids. Please understand. I understand. And he did. The system was designed to pit desperate people against each other. After Beth hung up, Marcus sat staring at bills that never stopped coming. Tomorrow he'd lose his job, probably face legal action, and the policy changes would die. But Lily was asleep down the hall. When she woke Monday and asked what happened, Marcus needed to be able to say he'd done the right thing. His phone buzzed. Text from Victoria. Amanda Vega just confirmed. Story runs Monday at 6 a.m. Are you sure? Marcus thought about Rebecca making him promise, about Lily asking if they could help, about all the transparent people working night shifts and being treated like they didn't matter. He typed, I'm sure. Let's make some noise. Victoria's response, thank you for trusting me with this. Whatever happens tomorrow, you changed something in me that needed changing. That matters. Marcus set the phone down and checked on Lily one more time. She was sleeping peacefully, clutching the stuffed rabbit Rebecca had given her. Tomorrow would bring consequences he couldn't predict. But tonight he could sleep knowing that when his daughter asked if they did the right thing, the answer would be yes. Sometimes that had to be enough. Monday morning arrived cold and gray, October fog rolling through San Francisco's streets like uncertainty given physical form. Marcus's alarm went off at 5 a.m. earlier than necessary, but sleep had been impossible anyway. He'd spent the night alternating between checking his phone and staring at the ceiling, calculating all the ways this could go catastrophically wrong. The Chronicle article would go live at 6. 3 hours later, he'd walk into a boardroom where Beth Carson would testify that he'd manipulated her, where Hartman would paint him as a disgruntled employee, weaponizing corporate secrets, where his entire credibility would be systematically destroyed in front of 12 people who'd never bothered learning his name. He made coffee in the pre-dawn darkness, hands steadier than expected. The apartment was silent except for the ancient refrigerator's hum and the distant sound of traffic building toward rush hour. Through the kitchen window, streetlights cast orange pools on wet pavement. Somewhere out there, presses were running, or servers were uploading, or however news got distributed in 2024. Words he'd spoken were about to become public record. His phone lit up at 5:58 a.m. Text from Victoria. Articles live. No going back now. Marcus opened the Chronicle's website. The headline filled his screen. Meridian Pharmaceuticals CEO battles, CFO, over worker dignity. Exclusive internal fight exposes corporate culture crisis. Amanda Vega had written it exactly as they'd discussed. The article laid out the policy proposals Victoria had developed. Hartman's opposition, the plan cuts despite record profits. Marcus's quotes appeared in the fourth paragraph, clinical and factual. I work 160 hours monthly at $16.50 per hour. My income is $2,640. My expenses are $3,980. The mathematics of survival don't work, and I'm not alone. Further down, Victoria's statement carried weight. I've spent 15 years optimizing efficiency without considering human cost. That ends now. We're implementing comprehensive policy reforms, even if it means professional consequences for me personally. Some things matter more than quarterly earnings. The article included Hartman's emailed response. Ms. Sterling's recent personal circumstances have unfortunately clouded her business judgment. These proposed changes would compromise our competitive position. However, the company faces legitimate pressures from hedge fund investors demanding immediate returns. Sometimes difficult decisions are necessary to preserve the company itself. Marcus read it twice, then set the phone down. The words were out there now. Permanent, searchable. He heard movement from Lily's room. She appeared in the kitchen doorway, hair tangled from sleep, still wearing her pajamas with the faded unicorns. Dad, why are you up so early? Marcus pulled her into a hug, breathing in the Johnson's baby shampoo smell that was pure childhood innocence. Big day, sweetheart. Remember we talked about how I might have to make some hard choices? Lily nodded against his chest. Is this because of helping Sophie? It's because of trying to help a lot of people, like Sophie, but also like the people I work with. Sometimes doing the right thing costs something. She pulled back to look at his face with those two perceptive 9-year-old eyes. Are you going to lose your job? No point lying. Probably. Her lower lip trembled, but she didn't cry. What will we do? The question every parent dreaded. Marcus knelt to her, level hands on her small shoulders. We'll figure it out, same way we always do, together. But Lily, I need you to understand something. Today, I'm going to stand up and tell some very powerful people that they're wrong about how they treat workers. They're not going to like it, and there will be consequences. But I'm doing it anyway because some things are more important than safety. Like being a good person. Exactly like that. Lily wrapped her arms around his neck. Mom would be proud of you. The words hit harder than any boardroom confrontation could. Marcus held his daughter and let himself feel the weight of every choice that had led here. Rebecca dying while he held her hand. Walking away from Boeing. 3 years of night shifts and medical debt. And now this deliberately choosing visibility, deliberately risking the fragile stability they'd built. I hope so, baby. I really hope so. Mrs. Anderson arrived at 7:30 to stay with Lily. The retired teacher took one look at Marcus's face and pulled him into a brief, fierce hug. George always said the measure of a man is what he does when nobody's watching. But sometimes being a man means doing the right thing when everybody's watching. You've got this, Marcus. He drove to Meridian through thickening Monday traffic, the Chronicle article playing on every news radio station he tried. By 8 a.m., it had been picked up by 3 national outlets. By 8:30, #Meridian Workers was trending on social media. The transparent had become spectacularly, irreversibly visible. The Meridian parking lot was chaos. News vans had set up outside the main entrance. Reporters with cameras tracked employees arriving. Security had doubled, keeping media off company property, but unable to prevent them from shouting questions at anyone who looked official. Marcus parked in his usual spot at the far edge of the lot and walked toward the building. A reporter recognized him from the article photo. Mr. Hayes, do you expect to be terminated today? He kept walking. Are you concerned about retaliation? Past the security checkpoint, the lobby hummed with unusual energy. Employees clustered in groups, phones out, clearly discussing the article. Marcus caught fragments of conversation as he headed for the elevators. Can't believe he actually went public. Hartman's going to destroy him. About time someone said something. Frank intercepted him before he reached the elevator bank. The facility's supervisor's weathered face showed concern mixed with something that might have been pride. Hayes, you actually did it. Didn't have much choice. There's always a choice. You chose the hard one. Frank gripped his shoulder. Most of night crew is behind you. They're scared to say it publicly, but they're behind you. Just wanted you to know. Even Beth, Frank's expression darkened. Beth's terrified. Hartman's got her convinced she'll lose everything if she doesn't testify. I don't blame her. Systems designed to make us fight each other instead of the people actually causing harm. I know. Doesn't make it hurt less. No, but it makes it understandable. Frank glanced around, lowering his voice. Listen, whatever happens in that boardroom, you change something here. People are talking, asking questions. That doesn't go away, even if they fire you. The elevator arrived. Marcus stepped in, and Frank held the door. One more thing. Marines taught me about courage under fire. This is that, brother. This is exactly that. The executive floor felt different. The usual morning efficiency had been replaced by tense awareness. Assistants whispered in corners. Junior executives hurried past without the usual confident stride. Everyone knew something significant was happening. Victoria's office door was closed. Through the glass walls, Marcus could see her on the phone pacing with aggressive energy. She looked like she hadn't slept either. The severe bun was back, the Armani armor restored. But something in her posture had changed. Less Ice Queen, more warrior, preparing for battle. She saw him and waved him in while continuing her phone conversation. James, I understand the board's concerns, but... She listened, expression tightening. That's not acceptable. Marcus Hayes has a right to respond to allegations before more listening. Fine, 9 a.m. sharp. But I want it on record that this process is being rushed to prevent proper defense. She ended the call and turned to Marcus. James Sullivan just informed me that Beth Carson will testify first. Then you'll have 10 minutes to respond. Then the board votes on both the policy proposals and your employment status. Efficient. Hartman's playbook. Move fast, control the narrative, don't give opposition time to organize. Victoria's jaw was set. But we've already organized. The article changed the playing field. They can't do this quietly anymore. Doesn't mean they can't still do it. No, but it means they'll have to explain themselves publicly afterward. She checked her watch, 8:45. Ready, Marcus thought about Lily's hug that morning, about Rebecca making him promise to take care of their daughter, about Frank calling this courage under fire. As ready as I'll ever be. The main boardroom occupied the southeast corner of the executive floor, glass walls, offering views of downtown San Francisco and the bay beyond. 12 leather chairs surrounded a massive mahogany table. Wall screens displayed the Meridian logo and stock price, currently down 3% on news of the article. The board members were already seated when Marcus and Victoria entered. He recognized James Sullivan from photos 63, gray hair, weathered face that suggested he'd built his success through work rather than inheritance. The other 11 were strangers, though their expensive suits and confident postures told Marcus everything he needed to know about their distance from his reality. Hartman sat at the far end, perfectly composed. Beth Carson occupied a chair against the wall, face pale, and eyes red from crying. She wouldn't look at Marcus. James Sullivan called the meeting to order at precisely 9 a.m. We're here to address several interconnected matters that have come to public attention. Mr. Hartman has requested this emergency session to review recent decisions and allegations. Robert, you called this meeting. The floor is yours. Hartman stood, activating a presentation on the wall screens. Thank you, James. This morning's Chronicle article represents a serious breach of corporate confidentiality and fiduciary responsibility. More concerning, it appears to be part of a coordinated campaign to undermine legitimate business decisions through media manipulation. The first slide showed the Chronicle headline. The second showed Marcus's employee file. Marcus Hayes was hired 3 years ago as night shift facility staff. Performance reviews adequate but unremarkable. However, recent events suggest he's been using his position to gather information for sabotage. Hartman clicked to the next slide, a timeline. Monday, October 15th, Hayes has public confrontation with CEO Sterling. Same day present at hospital during CEO's family emergency. Following week, private meetings with CEO about policy. Friday, confidential board materials accessed, an anonymous compliance report filed. Saturday, private meeting with CEO and her daughter. Monday, coordinated media article goes public. The timeline made it look damning, calculated, manipulative. This pattern suggests premeditation, Hartman continued. Hayes has exploited his access and the CEO's emotional vulnerability to advance a personal agenda. We have testimony supporting this. Ms. Carson, Beth stood on shaking legs. She still wouldn't meet Marcus's eyes. Ms. Carson, please describe your interactions with Mr. Hayes over the past 2 weeks. Her voice came out barely above a whisper. Marcus talked to several of us on night crew about the planned cuts. He said we should speak up, talk to reporters if necessary, that we couldn't let them keep treating us like we don't matter. Did he specifically encourage you to leak information? He said someone needed to tell the truth about working conditions, that if we stayed silent, nothing would change. And did you interpret that as encouragement to violate confidentiality? Beth's hands twisted together. Yes. Hartman's expression carried vindication. Thank you, Ms. Carson. Your honesty is appreciated. Mr. Hayes, you have 10 minutes to respond. Marcus stood slowly. All 12 board members watched him. Ms. Carson's testimony is accurate. I did tell her and others that someone needed to speak truth about our working conditions. I did say that silence enables continued harm, but I never encouraged anyone to leak confidential information. I encouraged people to use their voices, to file proper complaints, to document issues, to stand up for basic dignity. You accessed confidential board materials, Hartman interrupted. I saw materials that were left unsecured in the boardroom I was assigned to clean. I read them. I did not photograph them or remove them. I filed a compliance report through official channels because the agenda included items that raised legitimate labor law concerns. Convenient justification. It's the truth. Marcus's voice stayed level. But here's the larger truth this meeting is avoiding. You're debating whether I violated protocol while ignoring what I reported. That agenda included plans to cut 15% of facility staff during record profit quarters, to limit CEO authority, specifically to prevent policy reforms that would give workers livable wages. James Sullivan leaned forward. Mr. Hayes, the board has fiduciary duty to shareholders. I understand fiduciary duty. I held patents worth millions for Boeing. Marcus felt anger creeping in and didn't suppress it. But fiduciary duty doesn't require treating workers as disposable. It doesn't require making a single mother choose between testifying against a coworker and feeding her children. He pulled out his tablet. You want to talk about shareholder value? Your facilities department costs $4.2 million annually in turnover-related expenses. The proposed policy reforms would cost $2.8 million in year 1, but save $3.1 million annually in years 2 through 5. That's net positive ROI. Those projections are speculative, Hartman started. They're based on your own HR metrics. The real question isn't whether these policies make financial sense. It's whether this board values short-term stock price over long-term sustainability. Dr. Patricia Hayes spoke up. Mr. Hayes, you make compelling points, but you did access confidential materials. That's a serious breach. You're right, I did, because I saw plans being made to harm people I work with, and staying silent felt like being complicit. Marcus looked around the table. I'm not a perfect employee. I don't have fancy degrees or board experience. I'm a janitor who cleans your floors at night. But I know what it's like to work 160 hours a month and still not afford my daughter's medication. And I know that systems don't change when the people they're crushing stay quiet. So you decided to become visible. James Sullivan's tone was unreadable. I decided I couldn't teach my daughter that kindness matters while staying silent about cruelty. The room fell quiet. Marcus could hear his own heartbeat. Victoria stood. If I may address the board, Mr. Hayes accessed materials I should have been shown weeks ago, but wasn't because Mr. Hartman deliberately bypassed executive consultation. The compliance report was legitimate, and yes, I've been working with him on policy reforms. Not because he manipulated my emotional state, but because he's the only person in this company with both technical expertise and lived experience of what our policies actually mean. Victoria, your judgment has been compromised, Hartman began. My judgment was compromised for 15 years while I prioritize quarterly earnings over human welfare. It's finally unclouded now. Her voice carried steel. This board has a choice. Protect short-term profits by silencing dissent, or demonstrate actual leadership by implementing sustainable policies. I'm recommending the latter, and if you disagree, I'll resign and make that disagreement very public. Hartman's face flushed. That's blackmail. It's transparency. James Sullivan raised his hand. This is getting unproductive. The board needs to deliberate privately. Mr. Hayes, Miss Sterling, please wait outside. Marcus and Victoria found themselves in the hallway while their futures were decided behind closed doors. Through the glass walls, they could see the 12 board members in intense discussion, voices raised though the words were inaudible. Thank you, Victoria said quietly, for everything you said in there. Probably didn't help my case, Ma. Probably helped more than you think. They sat on a bench across from the boardroom, watching the debate unfold. Hartman was on his feet, gesturing aggressively. Dr. Hayes appeared to be arguing with Eichmann. James Sullivan listened more than he spoke. Marcus's phone buzzed. Text from Frank. Whole night crew is watching. You're a damn hero, Hayes. Another from Mrs. Anderson. Lily wanted me to tell you she's proud of her dad. So am I. One from Sophie Sterling's number. Mr. Hayes, I hope they don't fire you. You're a good person. Sophie. Each message felt like validation and burden simultaneously. 45 minutes passed, then an hour. Victoria paced. Marcus sat very still. Finally, the boardroom door opened. James Sullivan's expression gave nothing away. We're ready for you. They filed back in. The board members looked variously satisfied, frustrated, or carefully neutral. Hartman's face had gone dangerously calm. James Sullivan remained standing. The board has reviewed all testimony and materials, first regarding the facility's policy reforms proposed by Ms. Sterling and analyzed by Mr. Hayes. The board votes 7-5 to approve a 6-month pilot program implementing the healthcare scheduling and parental leave reforms in 3 departments. Wage increases will be deferred pending pilot results. Relief and disappointment hit simultaneously. Partial victory. Second, in regarding Mr. Hayes' employment status. The board finds that he did access confidential materials, which constitutes a policy violation. However, the materials were left unsecured and his actions appear motivated by legitimate compliance concerns. By vote of 8-4, we're reversing his termination and reinstating him with full back pay. Marcus felt the world tilt. He'd expected to be fired. However, James continued, and Marcus's brief hope crashed. The board recognizes that Mr. Hayes' continued employment at Meridian would be untenable given the public nature of recent events. We're offering a 6-month consulting contract at $85,000 to assist with pilot program implementation, after which his employment will terminate by mutual agreement. 6 months, $85,000. Time to find something else to clear medical debt to plan for transition. Third, regarding executive authority and corporate governance. The board has concerns about process failures that led to this situation. Effective immediately, all major personnel decisions require CEO approval in addition to CFO recommendation. However, recent strategic disagreements suggest need for revised leadership structure. We're restructuring Ms. Sterling's position to focus on long-term strategy, while Mr. Hartman assumes expanded operational authority as Chief Operating Officer. Victoria's face went very still. Marcus understood they were removing her real power while keeping her title. This is unacceptable. Victoria's voice cut through with quiet fury. You're punishing me for trying to implement ethical labor practices by giving Hartman control over the operations these policies affect. We're creating appropriate checks, James began. You're ensuring nothing actually changes. Hartman will sabotage the pilot program from day one. She stood gathering her materials. I won't be complicit in this performance. Effective immediately, I resign as CEO. I'll issue a public statement this afternoon explaining exactly why. The boardroom erupted. Hartman looked triumphant. Several board members tried to speak at once. Victoria, don't make rash decisions. I'm making the clearest decision of my career. I spent 15 years building power by sacrificing principles. I won't spend another day maintaining power by abandoning them. She turned to Marcus. The consulting contract, take it. Use the 6 months to implement as much as you can. And when Hartman tries to undermine you, document everything. Marcus found his voice. What will you do? Something that actually matters. I have resources. I can fund labor advocacy, support workers, organizing push for legislative reform. I can fight from outside the system instead of being constrained by it. Her smile carried bitter freedom. Turns out being fired can be liberating when you're rich enough to afford principles. She walked out without waiting for dismissal. James Sullivan looked at Marcus. Mr. Hayes, do you accept the consulting contract terms as stated? Marcus thought about 6 months at $85,000. Thought about Lily's medication fully covered. Thought about the pilot program. But he also thought about Frank's comment about Marines never leaving men behind. About Victoria's courage in walking away. About the 100 other transparent workers at companies just like Meridian. I need to think about it. Can I have until tomorrow to decide? James looked surprised but nodded. Tomorrow at noon. Marcus left the boardroom in a daze. The hallway had filled with employees who'd somehow heard about the meeting's outcome. Frank stood at the front of the small crowd. You actually did it, brother. They reinstated you. For 6 months. Then I'm out anyway. 6 months is 6 months. And the policy reforms, that's real, Marcus. People's lives will actually improve because of what you did. Outside reporters swarmed. Marcus pushed through without responding, got to his car, sat in the driver's seat with the engine off. His hands were shaking now. Adrenaline crash hitting hard. His phone rang. Victoria's name. Are you okay? I don't know what I am. Are you? Terrified and relieved simultaneously. I've never not had a plan before. But Marcus, I meant what I said in there. This is just the beginning. Meridian was one company. There are thousands more treating workers exactly the same way. Victoria, I can't think about thousands right now. I know, I'm sorry, but when you're ready to talk, call me, please. He drove home through midday traffic that felt surreal in its normalcy. Mrs. Anderson met him at the door. Lily's at school. Tell me everything. He did. Mrs. Anderson listened without interrupting, and when he finished, she pulled him into another fierce hug. George was right about you. Good man doing right things. Good men don't usually end up unemployed in 6 months. Good men do what's right regardless of consequences. That's what makes them good. She studied his face. What are you going to do? I have no idea. The answer arrived a Tuesday morning in an unexpected phone call from Michael Torres, regional organizer for Service Employees International Union, Local 87. Mr. Hayes, I've been following your story. What you did at Meridian, standing up, going public, forcing real policy changes, that's exactly the kind of organizing work we do. Except you did it alone without resources or training. Imagine what you could accomplish with both. Marcus listened to the pitch. SEBIU was organizing janitorial and service workers across the Bay Area. Torres's local had 40 organizers and represented 18,000 workers. They needed people who understood both the technical side and the lived experience of actually doing the work. We can't match Meridian's consulting rate, Torres admitted, $58,000 annually. But it's permanent, it's meaningful, and it's a chance to help hundreds of workers instead of just one company. $58,000 was less than the consulting contract. But it was more than Marcus had made in 3 years of night shifts, and it was work that mattered. Let me think about it. He picked up Lily from school that afternoon, and they drove to City Park, the same place where he and Victoria had met with Sophie. The October weather had turned beautiful Indian summer warmth, banishing the fog. They sat on a bench together. Lily kicked her legs, waiting for her father to speak. I have 2 job offers, Marcus said finally. One pays more money, 6 months working at Meridian, helping implement the policy changes we fought for. The other pays less, but it's permanent, working with a union, helping other workers organize and fight for better conditions. Which one do you want to do? The question cut to the heart. Marcus watched clouds drift across the sky. The union work feels more important, but it pays less, which means less security for us. Lily considered this seriously. Will we be okay on the less money? We'll manage, same as we always have. Then you should do the important one. Her logic was unassailable. Mom always said you should do work that makes you proud. That money is for living, but pride is for being alive. Marcus felt his throat tighten. When did you get so wise? I had good teachers. She leaned against his shoulder. Dad, and are you happy? Like really happy? The question deserved honesty. I'm getting there, baby. For a long time, I was just surviving. But these past few weeks, standing up fighting for something bigger than just us, that felt like more than surviving. That felt like actually living. Then do the union job. We'll figure out the money stuff. We always do. They sat together in comfortable silence. Marcus made his decision. Wednesday morning, he called James Sullivan's office and declined the consulting contract, called Michael Torres and accepted the union position, called Victoria to tell her both decisions. "You're sure?" Her voice carried surprise. "That's a lot of money to walk away from." "I'm sure Meridian's pilot program will either work or it won't. Either way, there are thousands of other companies that need the same fight. I can help more people from outside than from inside one corporation." "That's incredibly principled and probably crazy." "Little bit of both." Marcus paused. "What about you? What's next?" "I'm funding a labor advocacy nonprofit, using my Meridian severance to support worker organizing campaigns. Torres mentioned you might be working with SEIU. We should collaborate." "We should. But Victoria, one thing I need to say. What happened at Meridian, the policy changes, your resignation that matters. Don't let anyone convince you it was futile. Even though I lost my position and you're only there for 6 months, especially because of that, we proved the system can be challenged, that workers don't have to stay transparent. That's worth more than job security." After the calls, Marcus felt lighter than he had in years. The math still didn't work perfectly, but it was honest work that used both his engineering mind and his lived experience. It was fighting for something bigger than personal survival. It was finally the kind of work Rebecca would have been proud of. The months that followed weren't easy. Marcus split his time between wrapping up his Meridian responsibilities and training with SEIU. The pilot program launched with predictable resistance from Hartman, but the metrics spoke for themselves. Turnover dropped. Productivity increased, employee satisfaction doubled. Victoria's nonprofit funded 3 more organizing campaigns. Lily's arthritis stayed manageable with the union's better healthcare coverage. Then 2 years later, Marcus stood in City Park again on a warm October afternoon in 2026. Everything had changed. Lily was 11 now, taller and more confident. Her medication was fully covered. She'd made honor roll 3 semesters running. And she stood beside him now, helping set up for the small celebration SEIU was throwing. "Dad, where do you want the banner?" Marcus directed her to hang the sign reading, "Bay Area Worker Justice Coalition, 2 years strong." The coalition he'd helped build with Torres and Victoria and 3 other union organizers. 2 years of slow grinding work that had resulted in organizing campaigns at 15 companies, policy improvements at 23, and real wage increases for over 4,000 workers. Not revolutionary, but real progress measured in families that could afford rent and medical care. Victoria arrived with Sophie, who'd grown into a bright, engaged 9-year-old. The girls embraced immediately. They'd become genuine friends, meeting weekly for study sessions and adventures that had nothing to do with blood donations or corporate drama. "How's the nonprofit treating you?" Marcus asked Victoria. "Exhausting and wonderful. We just funded our 10th organizing campaign." "How's union work?" "Same, exhausting and wonderful." He smiled. "Did you see Hartman's resignation announcement?" Victoria's expression turned satisfied. "I did. Forced out after that audit found multiple labor law violations. Turns out when you actually investigate corporate practices, all kinds of interesting patterns emerge." The audit had been Victoria's doing. She'd used her nonprofit to fund an independent review of Meridian's labor practices. The findings had been damning enough that the board had no choice but to remove Hartman and implement sweeping reforms. "James Sullivan called me yesterday," Victoria continued. "He wanted to know if I'd consider returning as CEO under new governance structure. I said no." "Why must I?" "Because I'm doing more good from outside than I ever did from inside, and because Sophie needs a mother who's present." She glanced at their daughters. "Some things matter more than corner offices." Frank Wilson arrived with half the old night crew from Meridian. Beth Carson was among them, moving slowly but smiling. She'd been one of the first workers in the pilot program. Her healthcare coverage had finally addressed chronic health issues she'd ignored for years. She approached Marcus hesitantly. "I owe you an apology. For the testimony. For Cubone, you don't owe me anything. You were protecting your kids. I understand. Still, what you did changed my life. My daughters' lives. That matters." The gathering grew as workers from various organizing campaigns arrived. Janitors and cafeteria staff and security guards and all the unseen infrastructure that kept San Francisco running. People who'd found their voices through the work Marcus and Victoria and the coalition had supported. Torres clinked a glass for attention. 2 years ago, one man decided he couldn't stay silent anymore. Couldn't keep accepting that workers should be transparent. Marcus Hayes stood up in a boardroom and said, "What needed saying, consequences be damned." That courage sparked something that's still growing. Applause rippled through the crowd. Marcus felt uncomfortable with the attention, but Lily squeezed his hand, pride evident on her face. "But," Torres continued, "this isn't about one person. It's about all of us choosing visibility, choosing dignity, choosing to fight for the world we want instead of accepting the world we're given. So here's to 2 years of fighting, and to the next 20 years of the same." More applause. The gathering dissolved into conversation and shared food. Marcus found himself talking with a janitor from a tech company downtown who was trying to organize his coworkers but facing resistance. "They're scared," the janitor explained, "scared of losing jobs if they speak up." Marcus thought about his own fear 2 years ago, about Beth's testimony, about how the system was designed to keep people scared and scattered. Fear is real, but you know what I learned? Fear gets smaller when we face it together. Help them understand they're not alone. That's when courage becomes possible. Later, as the sun began setting and the crowd thinned, Marcus sat on a bench with Lily. Victoria and Sophie had left an hour ago. Frank and the others had returned to their shifts or families. Just father and daughter watching the golden light paint everything warm. "Do you ever regret it?" Lily asked. "Giving up the consulting money, the security?" Marcus considered the question seriously. "Sometimes I wonder what different choices might have brought. But regret, no. These past 2 years taught me something important, that being alive means more than just surviving. It means standing for something, fighting for something, mattering in a way that goes beyond just yourself." Mom would be proud. The phrase had become their touchstone. Rebecca's legacy measured not in money or status, but in whether they were living according to principles she'd taught them. I think she would be. And you know what? I think I'm finally proud too. Not just of what we've accomplished, but of who we're becoming. Lily leaned against his shoulder. "I want to do work like this when I grow up. Helping people. Making things better." "You can do anything you want, sweetheart. But yeah, helping people is good work." They sat in comfortable silence as the park emptied around them. Marcus's phone buzzed, probably Torres with some organizing question. But it could wait. Right now, this moment with his daughter mattered more than any crisis. He thought about the journey that had brought them here. Rebecca's death, the medical debt, 3 years of night shifts and being overlooked. That Monday morning 2 years ago, when Victoria had called him just maintenance. The blood donation that changed everything. The terrifying choice to speak up instead of staying silent. The consequences that had cost him job security but given him purpose. None of it had been easy. None of it had worked out the way he'd planned. But sitting here with Lily watching the sunset paint the sky in colors that didn't last but were beautiful anyway, Marcus felt something he hadn't in years. Peace. Not because everything was solved, medical debt still lingered, union organizing was slow and frustrating, systemic change felt impossible some days, but because he'd made choices he could live with, had taught his daughter lessons worth learning, had proven that transparent people could become visible if they found the courage to stand. "Dad," Lily's voice was soft, "that thing you told me at the hospital 2 years ago, about how some things are more important than safety, yeah, I get it now, really get it. Being safe is important, but being brave is what makes life mean something." Marcus pulled her close, this remarkable child who'd somehow absorbed wisdom that took most people decades to learn. "That's exactly right, baby. Being brave is what makes life mean something." They stayed until the park lights flickered on and the October evening turned genuinely cold. Then they walked to the car together, Marcus's hand in Lily's smaller one, both of them carrying the quiet certainty that they'd chosen the harder path and found it led somewhere worth going. The overlooked man had become visible. The Ice Queen had become human. And in the space between those transformations, something small but real had changed. Not salvation, not revolution, just proof that systems could shift when people refused to stay silent. Sometimes that had to be enough. Sometimes that was everything.